Some people say that necessity is the mother of all invention. But they've obviously forgotten that Mother Nature's also come up with some outstanding designs. We're counting down the top 10 most extreme inventors in the animal kingdom to see how long it took humans to copy the ingenuity of the natural world. Discover that we've not always been first to the patent office when animal inventors are taken to the most extreme. Earth is a planet of extremes. Extreme places and extreme animals. But some animals are more extreme than others. Join us as we count down to find the most unusual, the most extraordinary, the most extreme. Once upon a time, a long time ago, somebody invented the wheel. And since then, humans have taken credit for being the world's best inventors. But animals have been doing the same thing for millions of years. And occasionally, they inspire our inventions. Just look at what happened to the way we write things down. 2,000 years ago, we swapped bones for books. And we owe it all to the animal flying in to number 10 in the countdown, the wasp. It lives inside a nest that usually grows to the size of a football and contains more than 10,000 individuals. And the whole thing is made out of paper. The process begins when a queen creates a papery sphere. This is where she raises the first generation of workers that will go on to help her build an underground fortress. These workers use their strong mandibles to scrape up wood fibers. They chew them up, mixing them thoroughly with their saliva. This makes the fibers soft and moist, so when they return to the nest, they can use their mandibles and legs to mold the paste into shape. When it dries, it becomes a tough, durable paper. Wasps make it look so easy, it's hard to believe that up until 2,000 years ago, no human had worked out the process. And then, according to legend, Sai Lung, a Chinese court official, watched a wasp making its nest. After watching the insect mixing wood fibers with its saliva and spreading them into a flat sheet with its feet, he had an idea. Sai Lung realized that when plant fibers were separated and suspended in water, they'd form their own woven mats, which, when pressed and dried, became paper. It was a discovery that was to change the world. Since then, the process has been continually improved by a series of new inventions. So now one tree can produce over 80,000 sheets of paper. And today, we need a lot of trees. Timber companies are constantly planting forests to supply the 786 million trees needed to produce the world's annual paper supply. In America alone, it's estimated that each year, every person uses more than 300 kilograms of paper. The average office worker uses one sheet every 12 minutes, with laser printers annually churning out 1.2 trillion pages. And we owe it all to the animal at number 10 in the countdown. Wasps have been making their paper homes for millions of years, and yet we only caught on to the technique in the last couple of millennia. More recently, other animal designs have inspired human inventors, and they're coming up later in the countdown. In 1912, the Titanic was the largest moving object ever invented. Her propellers were larger than a house, her engines 4 stories tall, and her design so advanced that she was considered unsinkable. Then, on her maiden voyage, she ran into an iceberg. In only 3 hours, the greatest ocean liner ever built was on its way to the bottom of the ocean. Before the disaster, the only way to detect an iceberg was to see it in front of the ship. After the Titanic, inventors frantically searched for a better system. Eventually, they developed technology that fired sound waves at icebergs. It was called sound navigation and ranging, or sonar for short. It was a great invention, and one that the animal at number 9 in the countdown has been using for millions of years. Meet the dolphin. It has no problem navigating through dark, murky water because it uses sound to paint a picture of its surroundings. In addition to the complex series of clicks and whistles we can hear, dolphins also produce high-frequency noises that are inaudible to the human ear. These ultrasonic sound waves can be used to detect the size, shape, and speed of things in the water, including humans. Imagine if we could use sonar like a dolphin. We'd need a much bigger head to make room for a strange organ called the melon. It's a big blob of fat that acts like a lens to focus the sound waves produced by nasal sacs in the head. When this stream of sound travels through the water and hits an object, some sound waves bounce back as an echo. If we were like a dolphin, we wouldn't hear these echoes with our ear, but with a long lower jaw. It has a fat-filled cavity in the bone that transmits the sounds to the inner ear. By deciphering the stream of ultrasonic echoes, dolphins are able to build up a sonar picture of the world around them and target even the most nimble prey. Humans moving underwater use exactly the same system. Sonar is the Navy's underwater eyes and ears. Just like a dolphin, a submarine transmits bursts of sound energy, and operators listen to the echoes to determine possible dangers ahead. Recently, the Navy developed a new generation of low-frequency sonar that travels much farther and is far more powerful than traditional sonar. But the blast of sound could cause problems for other giants of the sea. The Navy estimates that even 500 kilometers from the source, these new low-frequency sonic waves retain the intensity of a jet engine at takeoff. Recent research has shown this barrage of sound can interfere with dolphin and whales' natural sonar. By interrupting their echo waves, it could disorient dolphins and affect their communication within their pods. If whales are scared by the blast, they'll head to the surface fast. The rapid pressure change could cause hemorrhaging and decompression sickness. Luckily, the Navy's agreed to limit the use of its new invention and to be mindful of their underwater neighbors. But nothing developed by the best brains in the Navy can match the incredible sonar of the Dolphin. In fact, its high-frequency calls may even be good for your health. Dolphin sonar can penetrate human tissue, just like the ultrasound machines used by physiotherapists. These devices have been shown to cause minute positive changes to damaged cells. Dolphin sonar is actually 4 times more powerful than this man-made version. But perhaps most of the dolphin's health-giving powers simply stem from the feeling of well-being that comes from meeting what's undoubtedly the most charismatic animal in the countdown. So far, we've seen super smart sonar and a genius on paper. But still to come, we'll discover that there's something fishy about this strange invention. And later, we'll discover how a garden hose helped us travel with the jet set. Our countdown of the most extreme animal inventors continues with a trip out to sea. Ships have been driven forward by propellers since the 1830s, but then in 1950, something very different came along. It's the jet boat. It's the perfect example of Newton's third law of physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In this case, squirting water out the back of a boat makes you go forward fast. Now, Sir Isaac Newton is considered one of the greatest human thinkers of all time. But an animal without a backbone has been using his third law of physics for a couple of 100 million years. Squirting in to number 8 in the countdown is the squid. Just like a jet engine, a squid propels itself by pumping water out of its body. It can reach speeds of up to 40 kilometers an hour, which makes it the world's fastest underwater invertebrate. It moves when water is sucked into its body cavity and then squeezed out a small nozzle, firing the squid off in the opposite direction. A similar thing happens with a hose. It's easy to control at low pressure, but increase the water flow and the nozzle goes crazy. And this was the inspiration for the man who built the first water jet engine. Legend has it that in the 1950s, when a New Zealand inventor watched farmers washing down their yards using high-pressure hoses, he came up with an idea for a new kind of engine. Bill Hamilton wanted to build a boat that could travel through shallow water, very shallow water. So we got rid of the propeller and replaced it with what became known as the Hamilton jet. And to test it, he went to some of the wildest water on the planet. In 1960, a boat called Kiwi was the first vessel to travel up a 160-kilometer section of the Colorado River that flowed through the Grand Canyon. The design was so successful that Hamilton jets are now used all around the world and move more people in Manhattan than any other ferries in New York. And it works thanks to a system that squirts high-pressure water out a nozzle just like a squid. We thought we were pretty clever inventing the jet engine 50 years ago, but some of the upcoming animal adaptations are still puzzling the best brains in the business. Our last two animal inventors made it to the patent office long before we did. Still to come, we'll meet a fish with an ingenious way to make you move faster through water. And later, it's no accident that when it comes to high-speed crashes, our next contender's no dummy. The next contender in our countdown of extreme animal inventors can be found in the heart of a raging inferno. It's estimated in America alone, each year more than $1 billion are spent fighting forest fires. The trick is to get to the fire early, while it's still relatively small and simpler to control. Which is why firefighting would be so much easier if we had an invention like the device used by the firebug flying into number 7 in the countdown. While most animals flee from fire, every Melanophila beetle within an 80-kilometer radius will come racing towards the flames. They're looking for the only place they can breed, freshly killed trees. It's the perfect mating ground, because all their predators will have fled the flames, and the females are left in peace to lay their eggs in the dead wood. A tree killed by fire can't defend itself, so the grubs can happily spend a year munching on wood before emerging as adult beetles. That's why finding a forest fire is very important for a Melanophila beetle. And to help in the search, it has its very own infrared light detectors tucked in behind the middle legs. This tiny pit contains about 70 sensory hairs that can detect the infrared radiation produced by flames from dozens of kilometers away. In the early 70s, Human firefighters were also equipped with infrared detectors, but compared to the Beetle, the new invention wasn't quite so portable.
Now there's this new device called Probi. It uses the invisible infrared rays to see in any smoke-filled building. It has to be cooled by liquid argon gas more than 100 degrees below freezing for its detector crystals to work. But equipped with breathing apparatus and the new Probi, a fireman can go confidently into any smoke-filled building.
Fortunately, further inventions have made infrared detectors much more portable and far easier to use. In fact, firefighters want at least one inside every home. But you probably won't notice it until things go bad at breakfast. There's an infrared detector tucked into this little gadget. To find out how it works, you need to take a look inside the smoke alarm. A beam of infrared light passes in front of the detector but doesn't hit it. When smoke enters the beam, light scattered by the smoke particles hits the detector and sets off the alarm. And while these inventions might save thousands of lives, they're nowhere near as effective as the infrared detectors tucked into the Melanophila beetle's armpits. The automobile has been one of the world's most significant inventions. Unfortunately, when we designed the car, it wasn't long before we also created the crash. Our soft flesh and fragile bones are not designed for high-speed impacts. That's why, in 1971, Ford first put some padding in an experimental fleet of cars. These crash cushions inflate in 50 milliseconds. That's half of a blink of an eye. One survey found driver airbags reduce the severity of head injuries by 75%. So it's not surprising they're standard equipment for an animal that routinely crashes headfirst into the sea at speeds in excess of 140 kilometers an hour. Gannets are the world's most extreme high divers. When they go fishing, they dive headfirst into the sea from over 30 meters in the air. That's twice the height of an Olympic high diver. Gannets begin their dive with wings spread wide to give them maximum accuracy. But just before they hit, they tuck their wings out of harm's way and enter the water like a feathery needle. And they have added protection thanks to some built-in airbags. High diving would be a whole lot safer if we were like a gannet. That's because just before we hit the water, we take a deep breath to inflate sacs just below the skin on our forehead and chest. These cushions of air help absorb the shock of impact, just like airbags in our cars. The extra cushioning means gannets can survive their terrifying dives. the impact of which can send spray as high as 3 meters into the air. Airbags are such a great invention that they've inspired a group of scientists needing to protect an object traveling at 19,000 kilometers per hour. In 2003, a space capsule spent 7 months thundering through space on a collision course with Mars. It had parachutes and retro rockets to slow the descent, and airbags. Lots of airbags. Thanks to these extreme crash cushions, the craft landed intact. And when the capsule split open, it released the Mars rover, which provided amazing images from the red planet's surface. While the airbags of the rover space capsule were amazing, they only had to work once because the vehicle will remain on Mars. Compare that to the poor old Gannet, which is constantly inflating its airbags for the dozens of dives it makes every day. So far, we've seen birds full of hot air and real-life firebugs, but still to come, we'll learn a trick or two from one of the fastest fish in the sea. And later, we'll chill out with an animal that's discovered how to return from death's icy grip. Halfway through our countdown of animal inventors, and we're taking off on a secret mission. This is a stealth bomber, and it was designed to be invisible. It's 50 meters wide, and yet on radar it looks the size of a sparrow. It even flies quieter than most jets, because its engines are buried inside the plane, effectively muffling the noise. However, when it comes to flying silently, this plane is no match for nature's very own stealth bomber. Gliding in to number 5 in the countdown is the owl. You have to be stealthy when you're trying to catch animals with fine hearing and lightning-fast reflexes. Owls fly in almost perfect silence, thanks to several ingenious innovations. For a start, they have really big wings for a small body, which means they need less flapping to fly. The flight feathers have a stiff comb-like fringe along their leading edge. This channels the flow of air over the wing and reduces noise. So does the serrated edge along the back of the feather. And finally, there's a downy covering that makes the wings very soft. This reduces the sound of feathers moving against one another during flight. No wonder scientists are turning to owls to help them make quieter airplanes. The wings of a jumbo jet and an owl are very different, but they do share one thing in common. When they slice through the air, they create turbulence, miniature tornadoes streaming off the backs of the wings. When these tornadoes crash into each other, they create a loud noise. But most turbulence occurs when giant airliners extend their flaps to slow down for landing. And this is exactly the time when we're standing underneath listening. Now, thanks to the owl's stealthy secrets, designers are transforming the harsh angular wing flaps found on airplanes. Even small alterations can change the way air flows over the wings, thereby reducing turbulence and making our airports much quieter places. While the owl has been helping us with streamlined flight, our next contenders inspired an invention that's sliding us smoothly through not air, but water. These are the plans of a very strange invention created by Hollywood prop designers to help researchers get up close and personal with our next contender. Meet Sushi, a 450-kilogram, 5-meter-long submarine. With stainless steel ribs and latex skin, this shark's meant to look and move like the real thing, so a diver can get close enough to study the breeding behavior of sharks in the wild. Hopefully, this invention will work better than an earlier prototype. Perhaps the cables driving the hydraulic motors were a giveaway, because eventually a real shark had no trouble recognizing the imposter. No wonder sharks have inspired a different group of inventors to get us moving faster through the water. Swimming in to number 4 in the countdown is the mako shark. This mako shark's huge tail and powerful streamlined body power it through the water 6 times the speed of the fastest human swimmer. But these aren't the only reasons why the mako is so speedy. Take a close look at its skin and you'll find a cunning design. A shark is covered in tiny teeth that hold water close to the body and prevent the creation of turbulence. When a shark swims, the sea is rubbing against the trapped water layer, not the shark itself. This greatly reduces the drag and increases the mako's speed. And that's what's caught the eye of inventors looking to break records in the pool. Swimsuit developers have made bodysuits covered in artificial scales to create a series of tiny channels. Just like in the shark, the shape and texture of the fabric was designed to maximize water flow over various parts of the body. By wearing a sharkskin suit, competitive swimmers hope to gain a slight advantage in a sport where the difference between winning and losing can be measured in hundredths of a second. A suit of artificial sharkskin may help Olympic athletes, but all of us would move faster through the water if we looked over our shoulder and saw a real shark closing in at warp speed. While our last 2 contenders have taught us a few things about swift swimming and stealthy soaring, just wait till you see what happens when we get an earful from our next extreme inventor. And later, we'll switch to an animal that has no problem hanging out on the ceiling. If you're a little hard of hearing, the next contender in our countdown of the most extreme animal inventors is just for you. Put down your ear trumpet and get ready for a creature that specializes in listening to love songs. On warm summer nights, male crickets rub their wings together to attract a mate. Unfortunately, it isn't just female crickets that respond to the call. The pulses of sound are a beacon for a parasitic fly that lays its eggs inside the crickets. The developing maggot burrows into the male and grows, eventually eating him from the inside out, before hatching into the fly called Ormia. To determine how it tracks down crickets in the darkness, scientists harmlessly attached it to a mouse ball and watched what it did when they played cricket calls from different directions. The results of this rollerball running were surprising, according to Cornell University neurobiologist Ron Hoy.
What we discovered was that the fly has an unusual ear. In fact, it's absolutely novel in the animal kingdom. No other animal has an ear like this. It's pretty outrageous for flies to be hearing anyway. Most people don't think about flies and hearing. They think of flies seeing you and chasing you across the room or getting out of the way of the fly swatter. They don't do that by hearing, they use their eyes. But in this case, we've got a fly which hears.
Unlike all other flies that rely on sensory hairs on their legs, Ormia has ears on its chest. This unique eardrum is 100 times more sensitive to male cricket love songs than the ears of female crickets. And Ormia's ears can even determine the direction the calls come from, unlike most of our mechanical listening devices.
The problem with most hearing aids now is that they're omnidirectional. That is, they're as sensitive to sound coming from the front as the sides or the back. And this is not at all natural, because in our natural hearing conditions, we have a certain amount of directionality. If we can put this back into a hearing aid, this would be a real boon for people, because you'd be able to focus your hearing. That's our aim, to make a really tiny microphone to insert into a hearing aid, which can then be inserted into the ear canal.
And if this fly does inspire us to make an improved hearing aid, our next contender could certainly help fasten it into place. Even with automated suction feet, climbing up a wall of glass is hard work, unless you're the animal running into number 2 in the countdown. The 4 fantastic feet of the gecko can cling to almost any surface. Unlike other climbing animals, the gecko has no need for suction cups, Velcro hooks, or sticky secretions. Researchers at Lewis and Clark College found that the gecko's clinging power comes from the structure of tiny velvety hairs on each of its feet. The sticking power is so strong that, theoretically, a gecko walking on the ceiling could support a backpack weighing 40 kilograms. Imagine if we had feet like a gecko. It would make cleaning windows so much easier. On each foot, we'd have a ridged pad, with each ridge covered in what looked like tiny scales, but are actually more than 150,000 hairs, the ends of which are further divided up to 1,000 times. Each gecko foot has more than 1 billion of these split ends. They're so small that their molecules can embrace the molecules in the glass, so the gecko almost becomes part of the object it's clinging to. Researchers are hoping that one day, artificial gecko hairs will revolutionize the way we stick tiny things together. They could be used for microsurgery or picking up delicate computer chips. Geckos are already inspiring new research in robotics. This prototype has sticky feet, enabling it to climb glass, although not quite as well as a gecko. Obviously, it'll take more work before these mecho geckos can match the real lizard's extraordinary climbing abilities. But at least we're getting close, unlike our efforts to mimic the most extreme animal innovation in the countdown. We've seen the 9 contenders. They've all inspired some amazing designs. Only one animal is a more extreme inventing machine. Our most extreme animal inventor has created something that could have come straight from a science fiction movie. Bringing popsicles back to life is only possible in Hollywood, and if you're the animal that's number 1 in the countdown. Winter is a huge challenge for small animals. Some creatures hibernate, but they still have to generate enough warmth to stop themselves from freezing, because as soon as ice forms inside their bodies, they're in big trouble. Inside cells, ice crystals grow like tiny daggers. They burst through membranes, causing the terrible tissue destruction that mountaineers call frostbite. For most animals, freezing means certain death, but not for the animal lurking in the leaf litter of the forests of North America. Hopping in to number 1 in the countdown is the wood frog. Researchers studying the frog are hoping to discover just how this little amphibian can survive the long winter months by sticking it in a deep freeze. Don't worry, it's not going to hurt the frog, even though it's a cold-blooded animal and can't generate heat to stay warm. When the first tiny ice crystal appears, it sets off a chain reaction that turns the frog into an ice block in only 24 hours. However, the frog is prepared. Each cell in its body is packed with glucose, a natural antifreeze. Also, the frog pumps special proteins into the fluid between the cells that attract the ice, helping it to freeze quickly. That way, the crystals are kept small enough to prevent injury. The whole thing happens so fast, even blood freezes as the ice races towards the heart. The frog may look dead, but inside, the cells are still alive, nourished by the same glucose that prevented them from freezing. Scientists are scrambling to learn similar tricks for humans. In America alone, more than 50 people receive an organ transplant every day. Unfortunately, the demand for organs is vastly greater than the number of organ donors. And since vital organs like hearts and lungs should be transplanted within 6 hours of extraction from the donor, it doesn't leave much time for transportation. Researchers are hoping to extend this time by using the same tactic as the wood frog. A company called Organ Recovery Systems in Chicago has recently patented a method to chill body tissues and organs well below freezing without forming ice crystals. Just like the wood frog, they're using a chemical cocktail to reduce ice formation and minimize damage to delicate tissues. But for some people, the development of cellular antifreeze chemicals has come too late. They've already gone straight into the deep freeze. For many years, people have been paying to be stored in liquid nitrogen when they die. This may sound like a recipe for the world's worst case of frostbite, but they're hoping future inventors will find a way to repair the damage done to their cells by the jagged ice crystals. Currently, the technology sounds like something straight out of Hollywood.
Done it right. It should be happy now.
The frozen bodies will be brought back to life by repair tools the size of molecules called nanorobots. These futuristic wonder machines will be small enough to go anywhere they're needed inside the body. Hopefully, nanorobots will be able to seek out and repair the billions of cells that were destroyed by ice crystals when they froze. Of course, nanorobots are also totally theoretical. At least the wood frog doesn't have to rely on human inventors to thaw out with the arrival of spring. After spending months in a state of suspended animation, the isolated cells in the frog's body reconnect as the ice crystals melt. Its heart fires back into action, blood flows, and nerves go live. The wood frog is reconnected and resurrected. It may take billions of dollars and many, many years before we can mimic something the wood frog's been doing since the Ice Age. Who knows? Perhaps one day we'll be able to cross the vast distances of space simply by entering a state of suspended animation like the wood frog. But until then, when it comes to animal inventors, the wood frog really is the most extreme.